In the benefits, I swear. Every place we dreamed about as kids, I'm taking flights to. Yeah, I swear. Would've been blind if I was born to see the future. It's brighter, it's brighter. I was in the mirror practicing, trying to get my speech right. Like I wanted to thank my mama. Also want to thank my supporters, and I'm thanking God.
What up, y'all? Welcome to the Dreams in Motion podcast. Once again, I am your host, Curtis King Bradford. And I want to start by saying thank you, because I don't do a good job at this, man. Thank you guys so much for subscribing to the YouTube channel, liking and commenting on our channel, man. We greatly appreciate it because it's helping us get these inspirational conversations out to the world. And like I said before, man, Dreams in Motion is not just about the people who have already made it, man. This is about talking to the average Joe person with a dream, with a passion. They may be working their 9 to 5 while they're trying to build a business on the side. You know, those people are valuable as well, and they have a lot of gems. So we want to give those people their flowers for at least trying, because I feel like oftentimes we'll praise the people that have already made it and want to hear from those people, which is nothing wrong with that. But on this show, I want to, talk to the average Joe people that are also making a difference behind the scene and doing what it takes to put their dreams in motion. And with that being said, man, I also want to make sure that I continue to give a shout out to my sponsor, the Whitener Group, man. Thank you so much to the Whitener Group for allowing us to use this space. And also, if you ever need any type of advice in regards to business credit, please click the link in the description below, and Mr. Whitener and his team can help you learn how to structure your business in a way that helps you get the business funding that your business needs so that you can grow your business in 2024. We're also here to help in that way as well. So thank you again for watching, and let's get into this next episode. Peace. All right, guys, welcome back to the Dreams in Motion podcast, man. Just like we were talking about earlier, I got a special guest in the building today. I actually brought my handkerchief today because I may shed a few tears. My brother has helped change my life, man, in an amazing way. And I wanted to bring him on this podcast to share his story, his ministry work, and a little bit about how I met him. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Mr. Todd Hayes.
Hey, thank you, Kurt.
Brother? Yes, sir.
Appreciate you, brother.
Yes, sir,
thank
man.
you for having me on. Looking forward to this.
Man, it's a pleasure. You know, we've been trying to book it for a while.
We have.
Yeah, I know you're a busy man, so I really do appreciate you taking this time out to sit down with me and talk about your ministry work and what you've been doing lately.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. So I just wanted to get into it a little bit, and just by starting by telling everybody about how I met you.
Okay.
Just to give y'all a little bit of backstory, I was struggling in a major way in my marriage. I was struggling in life in general when it came to addiction and lust and stuff like that. I ended up meeting Todd at Hope City, right? Mm-hmm. And during this particular time of me being at Hope City, I joined the prayer team. I started working with the ministry there, and as I was going through what I was going through in life, I looked over at Todd. We was both standing up front at the church about to get ready to pray for someone, and I asked Todd to pray for me. And from there, I told him everything I was going through in life, and from there, we hit it off and became good friends, and I joined his ministry, and that's what we're here today to talk about, the ministry work and what he's doing with the men there. So, Todd, I just wanted to ask you, man, like, how did you get into the ministry, and where did it all start?
Yeah, mm-hmm. I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. So, God called me at the age of 21 to be his son, mm-hmm. and I gave my life to him, and all of a sudden, I felt like I was trying to play catch up. Mm-hmm. I was 21. I was finally legal to drink. I decided I wasn't going to drink because I wanted to learn God's word, and I dove in, and I ended up graduating with a degree in economics from school in Ohio. Mm-hmm. But I knew that I wanted to pursue God, and so I decided I was going to go to grad school and do Bible study, and I went there, and I found my wife, Cindy, who was a missionary to Africa. She was in Chad, and I tell you, they had no electricity. She did everything what you think a missionary is. She did it.
Yeah, wow.
They pulled the beds outside. They sleep outside because it was too hot inside, and there was no running water. I mean, it was awful. It looked awful. Wow. So she's like, "Hey, I'm only here to go back and to become a missionary to mm-hmm. these Muslim folks in that part of the world." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I knew going into it, like, if I was going to pursue her, I was going to have to be involved in missions to Muslims. And so as I studied the Bible, you know, one thing that became clear to me in the book of Romans was that if general revelation from creation was enough to condemn a man, Romans 1 says his eternal attributes, his divine nature are clearly seen through what God has made. But man continues to reject it. And therefore he's without excuse before God. So I knew, like, they need to know about Jesus.
Yes.
What about Jesus? And so I started, moving towards that goal of being a speaker to folks that have never heard about Christ. It's hard for us to believe.
Yeah.
There's people out there that have never, they think Jesus is just a prophet. And so we started moving in that direction. And, back up a little bit. When I became a Christian, I approached some men that I really respected, older than me. And I asked them, about the struggle that was going on in my heart, like with lust and with pornography. I was exposed to that when I was young, like 10. And, the guy that I went to, it became clear he was the guy that led me to Christ. He was struggling. So he was no help to me. And then I was like, well, when I got to Bible school, I approached this guy. He was 15 years older than me. And he said to me, well, Todd, when I started struggling, then I noticed the color on the wall. Look at how beige that is over there. And I'm like, brother, are you kidding me? There got to be some kind of antidote other than colors.
Yeah.
Right? And so I learned that I had to struggle on my own. And I didn't talk to anybody about it again. And I kept spiraling downward, because even though God had called me to preach to Muslims and God had called me to plant churches in places nobody been, and we were seeing phenomenal growth, I felt like Jonah, because I had secret sin that continued. I kept struggling on my own, and I spiraled downhill until I crashed and burned. And so
you were struggling, not to interrupt you, but you were struggling with the lust and all of that while you were building the ministry.
Absolutely.
Overseas.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I crossed lines I said I'd never cross. And we had to leave the field. And as a result of my sin, my wife's calling, her vocation, everything was taken from her. And so we had to get help. We ended up landing here in Texas, and a church really walked alongside of us for a long time. And it's crazy because the group that walked alongside of us eventually said, hey, Todd, we'd like for you to come on staff, years later. And they said, we want you to oversee the missions, what we're doing in missions. And so we did that. I did that. And, I was under other authorities there, but it was when I told the pastor, hey, if you ever can use my story as a blessing to somebody else, then by all means, I'm willing to share it.
Yeah.
And so pastor came up to my office about 3 years in, and he goes, hey, preach it through Luke 15. You remember the prodigal? I said, I remember it. I was the prodigal.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I'd like for you to share your story. And for my wife, it was really difficult because, at that point, it would have been like 7 or 8 years since my bottom, and she felt like, oh, this is all like, I had to make public confession of my sin at the church that sent us out.
Wow.
Okay. So they had a special service for that. And, it says in the scriptures that we're to confess our sin one to another and pray for each other so that we might be healed. And I could tell you, it wasn't until I confessed my sin publicly that I really started to heal as a man.
And that's why we're here, because I feel like when I met you, I had so many secrets.
Yeah.
I had so many different things that I had never even shared with my own mom about childhood trauma and things that happened to me as a child. So it was difficult for me to share, but at the same time, it was so needed for me to share what I went through as a child. It was like detrimental. Like if I wouldn't have talked about this stuff whenever I met you, I think that I would have went down a whole another path and probably lost my life. It was that serious for me.
Well, secrets kill us.
Right.
Secrets will kill us. People have secrets about what they eat. Like they act like they're on a diet, but everybody can tell they're eating because they're big, right? And they binge at night, and it's their secret.
Yeah.
But that high blood pressure, the cholesterol, the fat, it kills them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now it's easy to see that in food. With sex, that's a different thing because you got to keep that under wraps.
Yes.
Nobody knows about that until it comes public, and then when it's public, it's messy. It's bad.
Yeah, and that's I think that's where I was at. Like all of my sexual sins that caught up with me.
Yeah.
Because it like like what they say, you got skeletons in the closet. I had too many in my closet to the point where I couldn't even go. It's like every time I would try to even just talk to God, like it's like God was telling me, you're not gonna get to the next level and what I have for you until you be honest, with not just your wife, but with everybody that's close to you about what you're struggling with.
Yep.
And when that came out of my mouth, I felt so much relief, And when you told me about the men's group, like man, you need to come join the men's group. And, well, we deal with these issues, and we got book work, and it was a little intimidating, when I first got there, because of the book work. And some of the questions that they ask you to like answer, and being in the setting of men, and we're all talking about pornography and talking about sexual sins and talking about infidelity. Man, it was uncomfortable, but it made me a stronger man, and I can't give you your flowers enough for starting that ministry and being obedient, which we will get into that, your ministry as well. But it has changed a lot of lives, man.
Well, I tell you, the thing is, I never intended to start a ministry.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. So I shared my testimony. The pastor had me do that at the church. And then all of a sudden, men just started coming. It was like they started coming. Okay. And the other guys that were struggling, they'd see me and they'd do one of these. They'd be like at church, like, no. They didn't want to talk to me because I was the guy, right? I didn't want to be the guy, but I got the T-shirt, said, been there, done that. Yeah. And so men started coming, and about 8 years ago, I started gathering men, and we would work, and I started getting some tools, and then we started using a curriculum, and then we created a 501c3. So Free Indeed Ministries was launched. And, we've trained hundreds of men. Yeah. And I am, not only do I preach about God's forgiveness, because the forgiveness that Jesus has for us compels us to come to him, not run away, because it's amazing. I mean, you look at any of the gospel incidents, he was full of grace, but he was also full of truth. But that's not the whole story. See, he came not just to forgive us, but he came to set us free. And that's why I say we're Free Indeed Ministries, because if you abide in my word, you'll know the truth, he said, and that truth will set you free. Man. And if you're going to be free, you'll be free indeed. That's what Jesus, it's his promise. And so I was around a lot of different groups, and they would always say, you're an addict. You're always going to be an addict. You're going to struggle with sex. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but that's not how I read Jesus. Jesus, when people met him, they got changed. And so I struggled because I was disobedient about not confessing my issue. I wanted to deal with God only by myself. This is the American way, right? Where we can only talk to him, and I could confess to him. Problem was, I was confessing all the time, and I was on the hamster wheel. I never got to James 5 that said, confess my sin one to another, because I was terrified of that. Yeah, that scares men. Yeah, it does. They're rough and tough until they start to confess all the stuff, their secrets, because that's shameful.
No, it is, man. What I want to ask you too is, like, how did you get to the point of being comfortable enough to like just share? Because I know you talked about doing the missionary work with your wife. Yep. But while you were doing missionary work, you were still spiraling. Yeah. And so, talk to me about, like, how did you get to enough courage, to just say enough is enough? Was it when you hit rock bottom? That was the point?
It was, because my sin was public.
Oh,
My
okay.
sin, I committed adultery. It was public. We left the field in a week.
Okay.
I mean, there were so many consequences that got ripped out from under us. So it wasn't that I just got bold. I lost just about everything you can lose in terms of, income, calling, sphere of influence, network of friends. I just, and it, not just for me, but for my wife too. We were in Asia. We landed in California. I mean, it was nuts.
Man, I keep forgetting you were actually a pastor over there.
I was a preacher. I preached almost every week. And now it's crazy, because now I hardly ever get asked to go anywhere to talk. So I appreciate you letting me share.
Man.
But it's funny, because I feel like I'm so much more ready to share about God's grace and God's truth, because I've experienced it, and I'm free.
Yeah.
By God's grace, I'm free.
Yeah.
Because of what Jesus said. And so getting all this stuff ripped away from me and my wife, it forced us into that identity of being his son and being good with that. Like, I'm good that I am his son. I'm confident in that. I'm chosen, forgiven. I am accepted. I'm adopted in his family. All those things are true. That's what my new frame of reference is. Not shame, not guilt, not condemnation, not fear, not wandering in secrets and lying and manipulating, all those things. It's in the truth. It's in the light. And as a result, I'm able to talk to guys. I'm real people.
Yeah.
Like I don't make a living out of preaching.
Yeah.
I'm a regular guy. I'm in real estate.
Yeah.
But I do give guys hope, because most guys don't believe they can get free. I didn't think I could. I thought I had more hope that a Muslim would come to faith in Jesus, which is a miracle if you've ever tried to witness to Muslims. But I had more faith in that than I did that I'd ever have any kind of purity in my life. And for over 14 years now, God has delivered me from that sin that beset me.
What do you think that, man, that whole topic of pornography is it's a touchy topic, man, because it's done behind closed doors.
So let me just say this. Like the verses, all the sin lists that we have in the New Testament, it says flee from sexual immorality. That Greek word is porneia.
Okay. Wow.
That's where we get the word pornography from.
Okay.
So it's every kind of sexual sin, deviation from what God said. So it's always at the top of the list. And it's the thing that cripples most men. And we're so afraid to talk about it. Like, I think about this shame thing. It's vital that we understand this, because the enemy wants us to be wrapped up in shame. I mean, shame is like an old sweatshirt. It's comfortable. It's my size. It's got stains and holes in it, but I like it because I wear it all the time and I get used to it, and it's warm and it feels good. Yeah. But the problem is, Jesus endured the cross and scorned the shame. That's what it says in Hebrews. So he took our place. Like when we say Jesus died for our sins, he took the shame also. It was shameful for him to go on a cross. It was the most publicly humiliating moment. The Savior of the world, naked on a cross, hung up for our sins. And yet he scorned the shame so you and I wouldn't have to face it. And yet Satan's playbook card is to give us shame. Sexual sin especially. That'll clear a room. Like you start talking about, it's not even about sex, but there's so much shame attached to it. And the funny thing is that in Colossians 2, Paul says that Jesus forgave us. He took the certificate of debt. These are all the things that are, the accuser uses. He writes down everything that we've done, and it's stapled up to the cross. And he canceled that debt when he went to the cross for us. And he publicly triumphed over the principalities and the spirits. What that means is, like, it's a public procession. So when an emperor would conquer, a king would conquer, the troops would follow him, and they're all chained up, and they would be humiliated. And so the enemy was humiliated. He was shamed, and yet he wants you and me to wear that shame when we commit a sin. And yet Jesus says he humiliated them by triumphing over them publicly. And because of that, whenever he tries to get us to wear that shame, it's like everything in me wants to like explode. Like in Philippians 1, Paul says, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. Everybody knows that, Philippians 1:21. 1:20 says that it's my earnest ambition that I will never be put to shame again. That became my life verse.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to take that shame on. And that he says, now as always, Christ would be exalted or magnified in my body. And I think about it, it's like the place that I brought the most disgrace to Christ was in my body, in my flesh. And now I'm never going to be put to shame again. Christ is going to get exalted in my body as I live for him, as I allow his spirit to flow through me. And to me, that's the part that I get excited about, because Paul knew shame cripples men. That's what keeps men from being involved in church. Like 2 out of 3, maybe 3 out of 4 men in the church are looking at pornography. And they're doing things they shouldn't be doing. They know they shouldn't, but they keep doing it. They don't know how to get out. They don't know how to get free. And so when you're at church and you break down and you say, hey, Todd, I'm struggling in these areas. Will you pray for me? And all of a sudden I'm like, I was the right guy that helped you find Christ's freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so by God's grace, I'm trying to pay that forward, because I was looking and I didn't search hard enough. I know there's men out there that are walking in freedom, but very few are willing to help other men.
Right. That's true, man. And it goes back to the shame, though. It's like it took me to hit rock bottom as well, to just be comfortable enough to just stand there and tell you, hey, because I was bawling in tears when I looked at you and told you that. Yeah. Because I was just heavy, man, that particular day. And that was almost 4 years ago. But it's one thing I struggle with is why does sexual sin like pornography attacks us so aggressively? Why do you think, like, because there's a lot of sins out here, obviously, but it seems like when it comes to lust and women and the pornography, it seems like it's like so powerful. Kind of like, because you taught us something through the curriculum that you had in the men's group. It's the dopamine, right?
Dopamine is a drug that gets released in the brain.
Yes.
And so when we do something that we like to do, it's a dopamine cycle.
Right.
I'll check my phone. Boom. Dopamine cycle.
Yes.
Why do people check their phone so much? Because they want to see.
Right.
Did anybody text me? Did somebody DM me? Yeah. Did they like my comment? Did they, do I have more followers?
Right.
Right? Well,
right.
So the whole thing about pornography is it opens up this excitement that men get excited, they get drawn into it, but then they also feel shame. So they feel lousy, and it becomes a spiral where I feel lousy about myself. I need a pickup, so I go back to the porn, and they get picked up. And then they feel guilty and shameful because of what they did, and then it spirals back around. And you just get caught in this binge purge cycle. And you don't feel like there's any hope because you're stuck in a pattern. And guys walk around defeated because they don't know who to talk to.
Yeah, and then you have men like, as I was growing up, I had more men like saying that, oh, this is just normal. Men, this is how we, what we do as men, we got to have sex, and if we ain't getting it somewhere, we got to get it somewhere else,
Yeah.
And like, it was more so, it wasn't like an issue growing up. So I never looked at it as an issue until I hit rock bottom, in my marriage and things of that nature that led me to your men's group, But when we started learning about, it really got me when we started learning about what it's doing to your brain, and how we have to reverse everything by believing that we are healed and believing that there is freedom, when you confess, because like you said, the enemy wants to keep us quiet and keep us in bondage, right? By not sharing what's really going on. But one thing that got me was the root, when you started talking about the root issues. And that's what I want to get into. Like, like, why do I get so angry at times? Like, I remember talking to the men's group about how I would go off on my wife or go off on my son so quick. Why do I have these tempers? Why do I respond to difficult conversations with anger?
Yeah.
And how does that all tie back to pornography and going to go watch pornography? And man, doing that work and the root work took me back to my childhood and what happened to me as a child, and how I didn't have my father in the household, how I was angry about that and didn't even know,
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of men can't even get to the point of confessing because they don't understand that there's a lot of root work that you need to be focusing on. So that's one thing I did like about your Free Indeed ministry, is that you didn't just come in there telling us shame on you for watching pornography or shame on you for infidelity or for things like that. You showed us that there's a deeper work to do.
Yeah.
And that's why we had to come back.
Sex addiction isn't about sex, Kurt. It's really about medicating pain that a man has. Now, some guys, they use work. They're workaholics. And they just work 60, 80 hours a week. Some guys drink. Some guys go play golf. But for guys that get caught in that sex cycle, it gets them, and the shame piece sticks to them. But the thing about it is, it's done in secret. It's done in isolation. So when a man struggles with anger towards those that he's closest to, that keeps them at arm's length. They're not going to come close to you when you're angry. And so you like that isolated feeling, and it's safer.
That's true. That's very true. Because I've, a lot of times over these years, I've always thought I was just how my mom would put it, a nomad. Like I would, when something don't work out in a certain city, I'm ready to go.
Geographic move.
Yeah, I got to get out of here, But that helped me.
That's going to fix it.
Yeah. And even alcohol. I started learning. I shared this with you too about my love for whiskey.
Oh, baby.
You're telling me like you may have to, check that, because I started noticing that, I like it. But then when my mom shared with me that she was a big heavy drinker, my grandpa was a heavy drinker.
Yeah.
And I don't know about my dad, but I know my mom was a heavy drinker. And I started seeing like, man, that's something that's on me, which is why I like it so much, But it became a handicap, to medicate or get away or isolate, you know what I'm saying, from the real things that were going on in my heart.
Right.
Yeah, so I just appreciate, man, like the group so much, because I remember there were some times where I didn't want to come back. And I shared it with you. Like, man, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of talking about this, but I needed it so much, because you're not going to just fix root issues in a couple of sessions.
No.
And that's why I remember you always tell us when you get up and talk to us before we part ways in our groups, you got to keep coming back. You got to keep doing the work.
Yeah.
Now, you put that in our head, man. You got to do the work. You got to answer the questions. The biggest thing that I love so much, which is why I'm connected with every man in this room, is picking up that phone and having accountability partners. That changed my life, man. Because like the people that I had friends in my life before I met you, obviously, but it wasn't accountability partners. It was just my friends to go hang out with and do what we need to do to go have a good time. Yeah. But not no real conversation about what's going on in here. Yeah. Until I met the group, got with the group, and now I got brothers like Eric. Shouts out to Eric and Chris. Where we talk all the time. And Chris, man, Chris has been a crazy accountability partner for Covenant Eyes on my phone. Yeah. it doesn't matter what I go to. And just so for y'all know, Covenant Eyes is an app that you can use to help protect your phone and your devices from pornography, from anything that you shouldn't be seeing. And it's really dope, so you should check it out. But Chris is on one of my accountability partners.
Okay.
So I can just type in a movie. It may be something like I was just telling my cameraman, like I may be typing in a movie to check out an actor that I like. And Chris will call me out on it. Like, hey, you good? I saw you typed in.
Yeah, because he gets all your web traffic. That's what Covenant Eyes does.
Right.
And so it just helps put a guardrail in your life.
Yes.
So you don't go over the edge.
Yes.
That's what accountability is supposed to be like.
Yeah, and I love that, man. And that's why I feel like I'm where I'm at today, and I can be vulnerable and share, because being in community with men that are holding me accountable and calling me out. You know, like Eric had to call me out a few times since I've been part of this group. And I had a little bit of pride, came up in me, and I had to check it, because I know that that's my brother. He cares about me. He wants me to win.
Yeah.
You know, so I appreciate all that, man. But I would also want to ask you, like, with this whole ministry thing, like, a lot of people feel called to ministry. A few people in my life, I know they feel like God is telling them to start a church or whatever. Do you ever see that in your future, or are you good with where you at with the men's group?
So, yeah, good question. I definitely feel like at 50, I found my lane. I found where I'm supposed to be.
That's awesome.
And that is helping men find freedom in this area. And so, by God's grace, we do have a bunch of leaders around me that help us manage a lot of men currently. But, I just feel like there's such a need for this kind of ministry. And so I'm going to continue to speak on it. I'm going to continue to help men.
Yes.
And, I feel strongly that God's called me to do this. I don't know what that looks like in the future, but I'm going to try and be faithful to what he does.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that, because, as I told you, I don't really have a church home right now. I watch online, and I've been good with that. But for the longest, man, I have considered Free Indeed my church home. And I have considered you as like a big brother and a pastor and, a friend to me. Even though we don't talk every day, I know that if I need to talk to you about something, I know you're going to be there for me. So I've always felt like the need to be obedient and sow into what you're doing, and that's why I wanted you on the podcast, because I know that there's other men that need to hear your message. Because watch this, I'm a preacher's kid, right? My mom wasn't always a preacher. I watched her transform into what God has called her to be today. But growing up in multiple different churches, playing drums and the keyboard in the church since I was 8 or 9 years old, I have never had a man talk to me about the damage that pornography and lust and sex can do to you. I just had adults telling me, don't have sex before marriage. Don't do that. But I remember finding my first magazine, sexual magazine, in my grandpa's drawer. And that's how it started for me. And it just opened up at the age of 10 or 11. It just opened up all of these different things in my brain. Like, I wanted to see more. But for someone who has been raised in the church and has never, I'm 41 now, and I have never got the message that you've presented to me over the last few years about how the damage of pornography and the damage of lust, of things of that nature, can cause, and how the root work needs to be done to help you, get free and deal with it, right? Never, man. And it blows my mind, because I've been in some great churches.
Right.
I've heard some great speakers, but for some reason it seems like speakers, they don't want to get up behind the pulpit and talk about this enough. And I think more people are, but
it's hard, because as a pastor or as a church leader, you make your living from being in that role. And so it's hard to be vulnerable, because you could get excommunicated. I mean, it happened to me. I lost my livelihood, 14 years ago when I came to my end, and it's not a pleasant thing. And so I feel a lot of freedom and boldness when I'm with men to tell them the truth. Like, I'm telling you the truth, but I love you, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You know, you need to hear some hard things.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think too, the other thing is a lot of church leaders are well-intentioned, but they just don't know. They don't know the path. Like, you don't ever get a whitewater rafting guide who's from, like, I don't know, let's say Arizona, because there's no rivers out there.
Right.
Yeah. So you've gotta be able to be one, to make one, right? And so if you're looking to a pastor who never struggled in this area, they're just not gonna. It's not gonna come across the same way.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So unfortunately, because of what I've been through, I can help other men.
That makes sense. Because it's like, I remember my mom telling me, or pastor telling me, what you're most passionate about and what God has delivered you through is typically what you're going to lead other people out of. And I believe that, because I'm very vulnerable now about what I've been through as a child. And I've seen, since being a part of your group, like Chris said it the other day, we did a Zoom with my brother that's behind the camera, and we did a Zoom with him just to do a check-in, you know, like a brother check-in, because he was going through it, you know. And I saw in that moment how, man, just being there for each other and being vulnerable and being honest. Like, he said some stuff on a Zoom, and I said, man, been there too, and worse, you know, with my temper and attitude, and I think a lot of us, we need to hear that we all going through the same thing, and stop being shameful and stop trying to be tough. Right? That's the thing, because that's what I'm saying. I've never heard it put this way. And I've had a lot of strong men in my life, you know, but I've never heard it put this way. And I think that if someone would have shared with me the importance in a spiritual way of why we should stay away from sex and stay away from sinful and what's the word? Promiscuous things, you know.
Promiscuous.
Yeah, I said it wrong.
That's all right.
Thank you. But, you know, it's like, if somebody would have shared that with me in a way where I could get it,
so,
man.
For a lot of times, like, the church tells you, just don't do these things. Yeah. Right? They're out of bounds. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's great. We know that they are, but the problem is we're like Paul in Romans 7. The thing that I don't want to do, that's the thing I find myself doing. Right? I agree with my mind that the law is good and right and holy, but without the law, I wouldn't know what covetousness was, or adultery, or any of these other things. And that's what my mind is focused on. Yeah. And so a lot of churches, well-intentioned, become behavior management, where I can't be my real self. Because if I'm honest and I'm transparent, man, you'll clear the room. Right? Small group's supposed to be about one anothering. But if you can't be honest about what's going on, then you're going to have a hard time. And for us, understanding the root cause is what is necessitating this desire for medicating pain in a man's life or a woman's life. And so it's not about sex. And the sooner you can understand that, the quicker you can divorce that from what is it that's really causing this, you know, void in a man's life. Is it because his father's gone? Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, that's a huge hole, right? I had that in my life as well. But I'll just share that, like, if you can separate those two things, then, you know, you're not wanting to just change behavior, but you want to get to the core issue, and that gets settled in Jesus, my identity in Christ, the fact that God is my Father, that I am His child. Yeah. And once you start walking in that light, then the need for the pain management goes away. Yeah. And then the behaviors go by the wayside. Yeah. And the thing that was so hard to ditch is now like, my goodness, I don't worry about pornography. I mean, that's not one of the things. I'm more concerned about, like, my kids. I got adult kids. Where are they at? How is their hunger for the Lord growing? You know, because a man, it's something we haven't even talked about, but how you go is going to influence what happens to your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Your granddaddy's pornography magazine that you found at age 10
Mm-hmm.
influenced your life for the negative.
Mm-hmm.
And there's spiritual ramifications there.
Mm-hmm.
In, you know, the sins of the father are visited the third and fourth generation. And so we as dads want to do what's right. So we're fighting for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just for us that we're fighting for in our marriage.
Yes.
We got to fight for our kids and our grandkids.
Yes.
And so there's a spiritual dynamic that's there that I think a lot of guys are oblivious to.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. Like, it's what they call it, spiritual warfare.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe that. I heard a pastor say it this way. A pastor, Mike Todd, at Transformation Church. He said, "What's not transformed is transferred."
Yeah.
And when he said that, it was just because I know, like, when I look at a lot of my blood brothers and sisters, we all kind of struggle with some similar things.
Yeah.
You know, we do. And I've been watching it since I was young. And, but you spoke on something that I want to touch on too is
Yep.
Identity. Like, I've noticed that my root issue was wrapped in my identity to be this famous music producer.
Right.
That, like, I thought when I was gifted to play keyboard and drums, I just assumed that, man, when I started seeing like people like Kanye West and all of these other big music producers, I thought that that was what God wanted me to do, because I can do it easily, right? And it's not that God didn't open up doors for me to produce music, you know, but I do feel like it's a dangerous place when you start tying your identity to a thing, like
To doing.
right, to doing.
Any kind of doing.
That's it, man.
It's not from God.
Man, and that's what
You're being. You're a human being, not a human doing.
man. That's good, and that's where I caught myself being. Like, I had to get the big records. I had to get the placements with these big artists. I wanted people to see it. Like,
Right.
I was telling everybody where I was at. I'm in LA today. I'm in Atlanta, because I wanted people to see me getting the big records and working. But that almost killed me, man. You know, it just like I didn't realize none of this until I joined your ministry.
Yeah.
Until I started doing more work on myself. Like, man, I've been out here chasing all of these things and trying to work for the sake of getting glory. Like, I wanted someone to see me.
Yeah.
You know, and then I started thinking, like, as I'm doing the work, like, man, you know what? I was the only child for a long time. It was just me and my mom in this little small apartment. And I always yearned for a big brother figure.
Yep.
I always wanted a dad that, and there's no bad talk on my dad, you know, because if you're watching Pops, I love you, you know, and I appreciate him, you know, and I've been building with my dad more.
Yeah.
But I have seen how I've now said it out loud that, man, I always want my dad to take me fishing. And it's like, man, like when you reached out to me and took me to play golf, bro, it blessed me, bro, because
Yeah.
I think a lot of men are not at a place in their life where they can be this vulnerable and like admit it, bro. Like, we are out here hurting because we don't have leadership.
Yeah.
We don't have real men guiding us and spending time. Like, I remember telling you, like, bro, I lit up like a little kid. I was out there playing golf, bro. I was like, bro, I ain't never got a chance to. I'm 41 at the time. I think I was like 37, 38 maybe. I had never had nobody spend no time with me like that, like a male figure. And so I said, man, why am I so emotional about that? And and it made me do deeper work. It's like, as a child, I always wanted that, and I didn't get it, you know, how I wanted it, you know,
Right.
no fishing trips, no camping trips, you know. I love being outdoors, you know. I went on my first hunting trip, you know, last year.
Yeah.
Man, it blessed my life. I was out there crying.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a crybaby. It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, and it's like, man, I've been realizing doing all this root work, man. I've been doing a lot of work on myself, and I realized that Pastor told me once before. He said, man, you need to take care of the little Curtis. You need to go date the little Curtis and do some of the things that you wanted to do as a kid.
Right.
Which is why I love the fact that we went and played golf together and did that tournament together. Why I went to go hunt with my brother. And he taught me, it's like, it's not my blood brother, it's my friend of mine on my wife's side. He took me hunting, man, and it changed everything. It's like, it's stuff that I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
But then when you think about it, when I ask myself, why does this make me so emotional? It's because I always wanted it as a child. And since I didn't get it, I started acting out in ways that I felt was beneficial that made me feel like a man.
Right.
And women made me feel like a man.
Yeah.
Like girls wanting me made me feel like a man, you know, and then I almost lost myself and I lost my identity, which is why I brought that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you, man, so much, like, for what you've done, you know, again, with how you've been leading other men, because, like, we need it more than I think you even know. Because now that I'm stepping outside of your ministry and sharing my story more,
Yeah.
I had about 4 or 5 men in my DM one day saying, hey, man, I need what y'all have. I need to sit down and talk with y'all, you know, and so I'm trying to bring more men in this vulnerability circle.
Yeah.
And just like, bro, it's okay to cry. It's okay to let that out, because the enemy, I feel like we're stronger when we can show other men that it's okay to shed a few tears and to talk about, you know, your upbringing and what you wish you had, because all of that is making me stronger today, even right now. So yeah, that's what I wanted to touch on, the identity. But let me ask you this too, man. Like, how many kids you have right now?
I got 2.
2? Okay. And so do you feel like, did you miss something from your dad when you were younger that made you who you are today?
Well, yeah. I mean, definitely there were things that I went through as a kid. My folks would fight a lot about money. My mom and dad split when I was 13. You know, I went to live with my mom. My mom ended up dying when I was 15. I watched her die.
Wow.
And that was really traumatic for me. But it's interesting, because when I came clean, I repented, and I went and I talked to my dad, and I wanted to confess to him what I had done. And he's like, oh, son, that's nothing. And then he told me about his sexual sin, and I was just like, you know, it really would have helped me if I'd have known that about my dad. Like, he never felt vulnerable to share anything.
See?
And so it shows me there's a reaping and sowing law that happens, that generational sin that gets passed down. It happens whether we're aware of it or not. But the generational blessing can also get passed down. And so for me, it's about making things right. And that's really one of the reasons, it's the reason I stepped forward and I confessed. I didn't get caught. I didn't get found out. I was under so much conviction, and really the Lord gave me a dream that if I didn't deal with it, my son would be stuck with this. And so I was so concerned for him, because he would have been about 6 or 7 years old when I got right with God. And now, you know, he's 19 and young man, got a bright future ahead of him.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for my kids.
That's awesome to hear, man. Like, see, it goes back to, if you never would have stepped up as a man and dealt with the spiritual warfare in your life, you know, like you said, in the dream, your son would have battled with it.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way, man. Like, I don't want my son or my godson or anyone connected to me to have to go through what I went through as a child. So I'm trying at every chance I get, I'm trying to be real with them.
Yeah.
You know, and I think and spend time with them. Cause see, a lot of people will try to act tough and hard, like, I'm good. You know,
Yeah.
I check on some of my brothers to the day. Oh, I'm good. I'm doing good. But it's like, I know you're not. You know what I'm saying? Cause it's like,
Yeah.
we're all damaged in some sort of way.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's hard for people to just be vulnerable and talk about it, man. And I think this poet that I love to watch, his name is Ezekiel. He's a poet, and so he'll get on stage, but he'll put words together in a way that helps you understand the Bible better too. And he said in this one poem, he said, if the fastest way or the slowest way to kill someone slowly is to keep your mouth shut. Don't tell them anything. Don't share nothing. Don't give them no wisdom. Don't, you see what I'm saying? He's like, that's the best way you can kill someone slow. And he said, because the enemy wants to keep us quiet.
Yeah.
And that's what I said, man. I'm not gonna be
He
that
does.
guy. Because I know that my healing comes from moments like this, even when I share how I'm really feeling, how you helped me, how you made me feel. And you probably didn't even know, again, that the golf trip meant that much to me.
Yeah, I remember you said it was important, but I had no idea.
Bro, man, I went and bought a whole new driver. I was so excited, man. I went and got me a whole new outfit, all of that, bro, because it's like,
You were looking good.
yeah, man, it was one. Remember that first drive? I still got that video. You was like, I hit that driver. You said, he said, Curtis. Boy, I hit that joker right down the center. But it's just them moments, bro. Like I was watching this video the other day of this dad fishing with his son. Bro, the look on this child's face when he reeled in his first fish, I wanted that.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say that. And I'm over it now. I may get emotional about it because it touches me.
Yeah.
Because I've done the work to see that.
Yeah.
Oh man, I wanted that as a child. I didn't get it, but I can get it now.
Yeah.
I can still get it at this age. You know, so I can go fishing with my brothers and still receive that.
Right.
But I get a joy watching men spend time with their kids.
Yeah.
Because I know how much it means to kids, man. Like, kids be needing time. They don't need you to come drop money off or, buy them things. They need your time, and they need your presence,
Attention.
And that's what it did for me. Like, the whole time, I remember taking videos every time we go from, hole to hole. It was just more so, not, even though I love golf, it was more so the time that we spent. You feel me?
Right.
So yeah, man, and I appreciate that. So would you say, like, now, you and your pop, do y'all have a good relationship? Y'all spend time together?
So my dad ended up dying back in 2010.
Oh, okay, man. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and I'm thankful that I got to make peace with him, and I got to reassure him about Jesus, because I feel like he tried to find love everywhere but Jesus, and so as he was dying, a broken man, he was humble. And that was special to me to be able to have that moment with him. But now I just I never really look at myself as like a dad to people, but I've got a lot of spiritual kids.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm grateful for what God has done in my life, and for being my father, and hopefully pointing to other younger men to who can give them hope and help.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you, man. Again, that's why we had you on, because you, like I said in my intros when I'm talking about, Dreams in Motion, it's not just about the title. Dreams in Motion to me is more so just about people following the visions inside of their heart.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not easy to do what you do. Like, I commend you every Wednesday when I used to come, and you'll be there, on time, and encouraging us to get there on time. Like, I know that that's a lot of pressure and weight to help lead these men and talk about this every single Wednesday. And while on top of you having your own wife and your own responsibilities and being in real estate, which we'll have to talk about that on another episode, because I do want to pick your brain on that. But
Okay.
But man, I just can't give you your flowers enough. Like, when I pass away, I want God and I want people like you to say, Curtis did a good job.
Yeah.
Curtis transformed. He did the root work. He showed up, he served, and he did what God called him to do, and I think that's what I'm trying to get people to understand. It's not about being this big celebrity, because I can go try to find celebrities to be on the podcast. It's about the average Joe person like yourself that are doing some really inspirational and positive things behind the scenes that are helping men, like really helping men. Like, and I try to share that with people as much as I can, man. Like, I have been changed. You know,
Amen.
and when you've been changed through a program or an organization, it's hard for you to stay quiet about that, you know. And it's like my brother asked me one time, he's like, man, why you keep going every Wednesday, like, and talking about the same stuff? And I'm like, bro, because it's helping me. You know, even though I'm drained at times, it's really helping me. So this show is about just that, man, like getting the word out that people like yourself are making a difference in other men's lives. And I hope that you continue to do that, and that God continues to expand it. You know, and I want to be a part of that. That's why I had you on the show.
Thank you.
However I can keep leading and spreading that message, I'm definitely going to do it, man. But before we end, I wanted you to just speak to any young man or even an older man that's watching right now. Like, please speak to them and tell them how they can get free. What's the first step?
Yeah.
You know?
So I would say this, like I help guys that are as young as teenagers up into their 70s. And the first step is always the same. You got to get honest. You got to tell the truth. You got to be willing to admit to somebody else where things are at, what secrets you're carrying. Because if you can't do that, you're going to live in denial. You're going to compare yourself to somebody else who's worse off than you and feel good about yourself, justifying your actions, even though you may be on a path to destruction. And I'll say this, you know, for the longest time, I believed a lie. And this is the thing. The enemy gets us to believe lies. And those lies are filtered through with some truth tied to them. Because if they were just a lie with no truth, then we would be quick to say that's just a lie. But if there's truth in there, we think that that must be right. And I always had this belief that I'm in control of this sin. I could just stop whenever I want to stop. And it was until I crossed lines, I said I would never cross it. I was like, I'm out of control. I can't stop this. I need help. And that's when I started to confess my sin to other people. And then other people got involved in my life. But until you're willing to get honest and to you know, deal with some of these lies that are going on, like, that's the thing. Lies are going to kill you. And the enemy, that's what he uses. He doesn't use guns. He doesn't use knives. Very rarely. He uses lies. And he deceives us. And that's why we need other brothers in our lives.
Yeah.
Because if you speak a lie out, well, I can tell you, hey, Kurt, that's a lie. And you need to get that, check that right now. Because the truth is what sets you free, not the lie. The lie keeps you in bondage. And so often we go to church, we think, well, I go to church, I know the truth. Guess what? I read the Bible cover to cover for 25 years. I still believed a whole bunch of lies. I believed a bunch of lies.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I started to unpack them with other men and say, you know, this is what I'm thinking. And they're like, well, that's just ridiculous. That's a lie. You're not in control. It's obvious. You're not in control.
That's so true, man. And I know we got to go, but it's like the lie that I told myself for so long was that I was raised by a lot of women, so I'm not manly. I don't have like
Yeah.
I look at some other men,
Yeah.
and I'd be like, I would compare, like, man, I don't really have what they got. You know,
Yeah.
there's something about what they have that I don't have, and it made me feel so small as a man. You know, but that was a lie I told myself since I was almost 15 years old, and I told myself that for so long, man. And so that's why I had to try to find my identity in music, because I feel like, oh, you can't do this what I do.
Right.
You know, so it made me feel better than the next man. But yeah, you're so right and on point, man. You got to be honest about it, you know, and you got to realize too, you know, that pornography is just not good, man. You know, that's for those that are watching. That's what we've been talking about. Pornography, lust, man. That stuff just gonna take you in a spiral down to
It's
a
like,
dark place.
It's like plutonium. At any amount, it becomes lethal.
Yeah, yeah,
You can't have any of it.
yeah. Well,
Paul said it this way, not a hint of sexual immorality among us. There's not to be a hint. And yet we're reeking of it unfortunately.
Man, especially in today's world, it's like you can't pick up your phone without seeing something that's too much, a little too much when it comes.
A little too much.
Yeah, so I'm still growing and working on that every day. You know, with how I utilize social media, and just wanting to stay strong. Because one thing about it is, even outside of pornography, Todd, I don't want nothing to have no stronghold over me.
Amen.
You know, I don't want nobody to have, but you know, me doing the work of God with my life while I'm here. That's what I want to be addicted to.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I'm here today, man. And so again, for those that are watching, man, please, I'm gonna put a link to Todd's ministry in the description. Free Indeed Ministries.
Free
right?
Indeed with 3s instead of E's
Yeah,
in
that-
the Indeed.
Yeah,
.com.
that would always confuse me for a while. I always try to type it in and I could never find it.
Right.
But I'm gonna definitely make sure I put it right in the description, man. I want y'all to go check out his ministry, get to know Todd. And again, brother, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you've done in my life personally, and my wife. We both thank you and honor you. Thank you for the gift cards you gave me the other day. We definitely went and spent that money already.
Yeah.
And we just appreciate you for following God's will for your life, man. So again, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
God bless you, Kurt.
Hey, until next time, man.
Do it, tell me how you do it, God. Even when they lie on you, you the truest, God. Yeah, yeah. When I'm up with trouble, come through on the double, save me like a band-aid. That's how you pull it off. Yeah, yeah. I'm just trying to take care of my family, break the curses generated on my family tree. Lord, just cover me. You my canopy. Put my trust in you. Put it all on me. Yeah. You ain't gotta get your life right to invite God. If you ain't got nothing left, yo, that's the right time. Even when my life seemed darker than a night sky, I praise God when I write rhymes and let my light shine.